You can't even imagine what it feels like to set the Christmas table for your only daughter and her husband, waiting for hours, only to realize they're never coming. If you think you know how this story ends, you're in for a shock. Because what happened next changed everything I thought I knew about family, loyalty, and the true meaning of Christmas. Before I tell you what I did after that empty dinner, I want you to do something for me. If you've ever felt abandoned by the people you love most, or if you've ever had a holiday ruined by someone else's choices, hit that subscribe button, like this video, and share your story in the comments. You're not alone, and your voice matters here. Let me take you back to that December. It was my first Christmas since my wife passed away. The house felt emptier than ever, every ornament a reminder of the life we'd built together. I spent days preparing her favorite recipes, the old family decorations, even the silly Christmas sweaters she used to make us wear. I wanted to keep her memory alive, to show my daughter Anna that we could still be a family. Anna had promised she and her husband, Tom, would come. "We wouldn't miss it, Dad," she said on the phone, her voice bright but distant. I tried to believe her. I set the table for 3, lit the candles, and waited. The clock ticked past 6, then 7, then 8. I called, but no answer. I texted, but the message stayed unread. The food grew cold, the candles burned low, and finally I blew them out and sat in the dark, wondering what I'd done to deserve this. You might be wondering why my own daughter would abandon me on Christmas. I was wondering the same thing. But as I sat there, staring at the empty chairs, I realized there was more to this story than I understood. What had changed since my wife died? Why had Anna grown so distant, and what secrets were hiding beneath the surface of our family? If you want to know what really tore us apart, and how I found the strength to fight back, keep watching. Because the truth was buried deeper than any holiday grief, and the revenge that followed was sweeter than I ever imagined. That night, I sat alone in the living room, the glow of the Christmas tree casting shadows on the walls. I replayed every conversation with Anna over the past year, every awkward silence, every time she'd avoided talking about her mother's will. I remembered the way Tom had started acting cold after the funeral, the way Anna had stopped visiting, the way they'd both seemed to pull away from me. I poured myself a glass of wine and tried to make sense of it all. Was it something I said, something I did, or was there something else, something I didn't know? If you've ever been left behind by your own family, you know how hard it is to keep going. But you also know that sometimes the only way to survive is to find out the truth, no matter how painful it is. What would you do if your own child turned their back on you? Would you fight for answers, or would you let them go? Let me know in the comments. And if you haven't seen our story about the father who was left on a remote road after his wife's funeral, watch it next. Sometimes the people closest to us are the ones who hide the deepest secrets. That night, as I sat in the quiet, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let this be the end of my story. I was going to find out why Anna and Tom had abandoned me. And I was going to make sure they never forgot what they'd done. You ever spend a night so restless that every tick of the clock feels like a reminder of what you've lost? That's how I felt after that empty Christmas dinner. I barely slept, replaying every memory of Anna's childhood, every Christmas morning we'd shared as a family. I kept asking myself, how did we get here? How did my only daughter become a stranger? The next morning I called Anna again. This time she picked up, her voice flat and tired. "Dad, I'm sorry, we just couldn't make it." I could hear Tom in the background saying something I couldn't quite catch. I tried to keep my voice steady. Anna, I waited for you. I made all your mother's favorite dishes. I just wanted us to be together. There was a long pause. It's complicated, Dad. We'll talk soon, okay? And then she hung up. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the cold leftovers, feeling more alone than ever. But something about her voice, about the way she said, "It's complicated," stuck with me. I decided I needed answers. I started going through old emails, letters, anything that might explain the distance. That's when I found it. A copy of my wife's will tucked away in a folder I hadn't opened since the funeral. As I read through the document, my heart sank. The will was clear. Everything, our house, our savings, even the family heirlooms, was left to Anna. There was a note in my wife's handwriting. Anna, take care of your father. He'll need you. But there was nothing left directly to me. No mention of my name, no instructions, just a quiet assumption that Anna would do the right thing. I felt a wave of anger and confusion. Why would my wife do this? Why would she trust Anna to look after me, instead of making sure I was protected? I thought about the months before her death, how Anna and Tom had visited more often, how they'd insisted on helping with the paperwork, how they'd always found a way to tell my wife alone. If you've ever discovered a secret that changes everything, you know how it feels to have the ground shift beneath your feet. What would you do if you realized your own child held all the power over your future? Would you confront them, or would you wait for them to come to you? Let me know in the comments. And if you haven't seen our story about the son who left his father stranded after a funeral, watch it next. Sometimes the truth is more painful than the betrayal itself. I decided to confront Anna. I drove to her house, rehearsing what I would say. When she opened the door, she looked surprised, and maybe a little guilty. Tom hovered in the background, arms crossed. "Dad, what are you doing here?" Anna asked, her voice tense. I held up the will. "I found this. I want to know why you didn't come to Christmas dinner. I want to know why you've been avoiding me. And I want to know what your mother told you before she died." Anna's eyes filled with tears. "Dad, it's not what you think. Mum was scared. She thought you couldn't handle things on your own. She asked me to take care of everything. Tom thought it was best if we kept our distance for a while. He said you needed time to adjust." I looked at Tom, who wouldn't meet my eyes. "Is that true, Tom, or did you just want me out of the way?" He shrugged. "We thought it was for the best. You seemed lost after your wife died. Anna was worried about you. We both were. If you've ever been treated like a burden by your own family, you know how much it hurts. But you also know that sometimes the only way to reclaim your dignity is to demand the truth. I told Anna and Tom that I deserved better, that I wasn't going to be pushed aside, not by them, not by anyone. I left their house that day with a new resolve. I was going to take back control of my life, and I was going to show them that I was stronger than they ever imagined. You ever walk out of your own child's house and realize you're not just grieving a loss, you're grieving the family you thought you had? That's how I felt driving home from Anna and Tom's place. The roads were icy, the world outside cold and silent, but nothing compared to the chill I felt inside. I kept replaying Anna's words. Mum was scared. She thought you couldn't handle things. Was that really what my wife believed? Or was it what someone wanted her to believe? That night, I sat in my living room, surrounded by memories, photos of happier times, my wife's favorite books, the old Christmas ornaments I'd packed away. I realized I had a choice. I could let this break me, or I could fight for the truth. I decided to start with the lawyer who'd handled my wife's will. The next morning, I called the law office and asked for an appointment. The receptionist hesitated, then said, "Mr. Carter, I think you should come in as soon as possible." That only made my heart pound harder. When I arrived, the lawyer, Ms. Reynolds, greeted me with a somber look. "I was wondering when you'd come," she said. She pulled out a thick file and slid it across the desk. "Your wife left instructions for you. She wanted you to have this if you ever felt lost or left out." My hands shook as I opened the folder. Inside were letters, one for me, one for Anna, and one for Tom. There were also copies of emails between my wife and Anna and a private note from my wife to Ms. Reynolds. I read my wife's letter first. Her handwriting was shaky but clear. "If you're reading this, it means you feel alone. I'm sorry. I never wanted you to feel abandoned. I trusted Anna to look after you, but I also left you something only you can claim. Ask Ms. Reynolds about the trust." Ms. Reynolds explained that my wife had set up a separate trust in my name, one that Anna and Tom knew nothing about. "She wanted to protect you, Mr. Carter. She was afraid you'd be too proud to accept help from Anna, so she made sure you'd always have something of your own. If you've ever discovered a secret that changes everything, you know the mix of relief and anger that comes with it." I was grateful for my wife's foresight, but furious that Anna and Tom had kept me in the dark, treating me like a burden instead of a father. I asked Ms. Reynolds about the emails. She hesitated, then handed them over. As I read, the truth became clear. Anna had been manipulated by Tom, who convinced her that I was too fragile to handle life alone. He'd pushed her to take control, to keep me at arm's length, to protect me by isolating me. My wife had trusted Anna, but Anna had trusted Tom, and Tom had only ever cared about the inheritance. If you've ever realized someone you love was used as a pawn, you know how deep that betrayal cuts. What would you do if you found out your own child was manipulated against you? Would you forgive, or would you fight back? Let me know in the comments. And if you haven't seen our story about the father who reclaimed his dignity after being cast aside, watch it next. Sometimes the best revenge is taking back your life. And I left the lawyer's office with a new sense of purpose. I wasn't powerless, I wasn't alone, and I wasn't going to let Anna and Tom control my story any longer. You ever have a moment where you realize you're stronger than you thought? That's what hit me as I walked out of Ms. Reynolds' office. The folder of secrets clutched in my hand. For the first time since my wife's funeral, I felt a spark of hope. I wasn't just a forgotten old man. I was someone my wife had trusted to stand on his own, even if she'd been afraid for me. And now I had proof that Anna and Tom's story wasn't the whole truth. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, reading my wife's letter over and over. Her words echoed in my mind. "I never wanted you to feel abandoned." I realized she'd done what she thought was best, even if it hurt. But Anna and Tom had twisted her wishes, turning care into control. I decided it was time to confront them, not with anger, but with the truth. The next day I called Anna and asked her to come over. She sounded nervous, but she agreed. When she arrived, she looked tired, her eyes rimmed with guilt. Tom stayed in the car, refusing to come inside. I sat her down and handed her the letter from her mother, along with the emails and the trust documents. She read in silence, tears streaming down her face. "Dad, I didn't know about the trust. Tom told me you'd be lost without me. He said Mum wanted me to take care of everything. I thought I was helping." I nodded, my own eyes stinging. "Anna, I know you loved your mother. I know you wanted to do right by her, but you let Tom convince you I was helpless. You let him turn you against me. That's not what your mother wanted, and it's not what I want either." She sobbed, covering her face with her hands. "I'm so sorry, Dad. I just wanted to do the right thing. I never meant to hurt you." If you've ever watched your child realize the consequences of their choices, you know how painful and necessary that moment can be. What would you do if you were in my place? Would you forgive, or would you let the hurt linger? Let me know in the comments. And if you haven't seen our story about the father who found peace after betrayal, watch it next. Sometimes the hardest truth is the one that sets you free. I told Anna about the trust, about how her mother had protected me in her own way. I told her I forgave her, but that things had to change. "I need you to be my daughter, not my caretaker. I need you to trust me to live my own life." She nodded, wiping her tears. "I want that too, Dad. I want us to be a family again." As she left, I watched her walk to the car, her shoulders lighter than when she'd arrived. Tom didn't look at me, but I saw the fear in his eyes. He knew the game was up. That night, I felt a peace I hadn't known in months. I wasn't alone. I wasn't powerless. And I wasn't going to let anyone, family or not, decide my worth. You ever notice how the air feels different after you finally speak your truth? That's how it was the day after Anna left my house, her eyes red but her heart lighter. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe. I spent the morning walking through the house, touching the old photographs, the Christmas ornaments, the little things my wife had left behind. I realized I wasn't just reclaiming my life, I was reclaiming my home. But I knew things with Tom weren't finished. That afternoon he called. His voice was cold, defensive. "So you went behind our backs? You think you're clever, old man?" I kept my voice calm. "No, Tom. I just wanted the truth. I know what you did. I know how you manipulated Anna, and I know you were more interested in the inheritance than the family." He scoffed, but I could hear the fear in his words. "You can't prove anything." I smiled, even though he couldn't see it. "I don't have to. Anna knows now, and so do I. You're not welcome in my home until you can be honest, with me and with her. If you've ever had to set boundaries with someone who thought they could control you, you know how hard it is. But you also know how freeing it feels to finally stand up for yourself. What would you do if you were in my shoes? Would you let Tom back in, or would you keep your distance? Let me know in the comments. And if you haven't seen our story about the father who found strength after being betrayed at Christmas, watch it next. Sometimes, the best revenge is living your life on your own terms. Anna started coming around more often, sometimes alone, sometimes with the grandkids. We cooked together, laughed together, and slowly rebuilt the trust that Tom had tried to destroy. She apologized again and again, but I told her the only thing that mattered was moving forward. One evening, as we sat by the fire, Anna turned to me. "Dad, I want you to know. I'm done letting Tom control my life. I want to be your daughter again. I want to make new memories, just us." I hugged her, feeling the weight of the past year finally lift. That's all I ever wanted, Anna, for us to be a family again. If you've ever had to forgive someone you love, you know it's not about forgetting the pain. It's about choosing to let go, to make room for something better. That night, as I watched the snow fall outside, I realized I was finally free, not just from Tom's manipulation, but from the loneliness that had haunted me since my wife's death. You ever realize that sometimes the best revenge isn't about payback? It's about reclaiming your own happiness. That's what I discovered as the weeks passed and Anna and I started to rebuild our relationship. The house felt warmer, the days brighter. I found myself looking forward to her visits, to the laughter of my grandkids, to the simple joy of sharing a meal with family again. Tom, on the other hand, kept his distance. He tried calling Anna, tried to convince her Tia that I was manipulating her now, but she saw through it. She told him she needed space, that she wanted to focus on her relationship with me and the kids. For the first time, she was making choices for herself, not for Tom, not even for her mother's memory, but for her own peace of mind. One Sunday, Anna brought over a box of old letters she'd found in her attic. Letters my wife had written to her over the years. We sat together at the kitchen table, reading them aloud, laughing and crying at the memories. In one letter, my wife wrote, "Family is about forgiveness, Anna. It's about loving each other even when it's hard. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Those words hit me hard. I realized that my wife had always known what mattered most. She'd tried to protect us, even from beyond the grave. And now it was up to us to honor her wishes, not by clinging to the past, but by building something new. If you've ever had to let go of anger to make room for love, you know how hard it is. But you also know how rewarding it can be. What would you do if you had the chance to start over with someone you love? Would you take it, or would you let pride get in the way? Let me know in the comments. And if you haven't seen our story about the father who found hope after heartbreak, watch it next. Sometimes the sweetest revenge is simply living well. As spring approached, Anna and I started planning a new tradition, a family dinner, just the two of us and the kids. No drama, no expectations. We cooked together, shared stories, and made new memories. The pain of the past was still there, but it was softer now, replaced by gratitude for the second chance we'd been given. That night, as I watched Anna tuck her children into bed, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. I realized that I didn't need to punish Tom or even to hate him. I just needed to live my life, to love my family, and to remember that forgiveness is the greatest gift we can give, to others and to ourselves. You might think a story like this ends with a dramatic confrontation or a grand gesture. But the truth is, real healing happens in the quiet moments, the ones where forgiveness is chosen, not forced. As summer arrived, I found myself reflecting on everything Anna and I had survived. The betrayal, the loneliness, the anger. It was all still there, but it no longer controlled my life. Anna and I made our new family dinners a tradition. Sometimes the grandkids would help me cook. Sometimes we'd just sit on the porch and watch the fireflies. We talked about my wife, about the mistakes we'd all made, and about the future we wanted to build together. The house felt alive again, filled with laughter and hope instead of regret. Tom eventually moved out of state. He sent Anna a letter, apologizing for everything he'd done, admitting that he'd let greed and fear cloud his judgment. Anna showed me the letter and we read it together. She cried, but she didn't let it break her. "I forgive him, Dad," she said, "but I'm done letting him decide how I live my life." If you've ever had to let go of someone who hurt you, you know how hard it is. But you also know how freeing it can be. What would you do if you had the chance to start over? Would you take it, or would you let the past hold you back? Let me know in the comments. And if you haven't seen our story about the father who found peace after being left behind, watch it next. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living a life you're proud of. As the year went on, Anna and I grew closer than ever. We honored my wife's memory not by clinging to old wounds, but by building something new, something stronger. I realized that the greatest gift I could give my daughter wasn't money or inheritance, but forgiveness, understanding, and a second chance. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Anna turned to me and said, "Thank you, Dad, for not giving up on me, for fighting for our family even when I didn't deserve it." I smiled, feeling a peace I hadn't known in years. That's what family does, Anna. We fight for each other, we forgive, and we keep moving forward. If you've made it this far, thank you for being part of my journey. Maybe you faced your own betrayals, or maybe you're still searching for a way to heal. Whatever your story, know that you're not alone. There's always a way back, even from the loneliest Christmas table. So, what would you do if your own child abandoned you? Would you fight for them, or would you let them go? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might be the hope someone else needs. And if this story touched you, please subscribe, like, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Check out our other videos, especially the one about the father who found redemption after being cast aside. Because sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones we live through, and the ones we choose to tell. Thank you for listening. Hold your loved ones close, and remember, forgiveness isn't weakness, it's the ultimate strength.